Welcome in, boys and girls, one and all. Thank you for being here tonight. We have a Heisman Trophy Award to talk about, people. And I don't know if you paid attention to how many SEC finalists there were for the Heisman Trophy. There were not many. This was one of a few nights on the entire college football calendar that the Big 12 can lay claim to actually dominating, which does have some value. Now, I'm not here to tell you that it's more valuable than winning a national championship, having the most teams in the college football playoff, a whole number of things that the SEC and or Big Ten would lay claim to. But when you are in a day and age where you've got to play by different rules, essentially, you can't do this the same way the SEC and Big Ten do to create the most attention, money, etc. for your conference. I do think this is a positive for the Big 12 to have a night like they did with the Heisman, going to Travis Hunter, Cam Skattebo, Shaduer Sanders, also in the top 8 for the award. This was a nice night. And on the subject of the Heisman and Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter, we are having the wrong arguments here. Why are we wasting so much time at each other's throats about this? And like I've stood up, I feel like, for Travis Hunter a bit here. I've tried not to be too negative toward the other side, right? Like negative toward tearing down Ashton Jeanty. It is crazy, the discourse that I was seeing on good old Twitter.com about these two and how passionate everybody is on one side or the other, which is fine if you're passionate, but we don't need to be tearing people down. That would be my point there. We've got one Big 12 team really dominating the transfer portal. Speaking of tearing things up, dominating the transfer portal, but how much can we trust that? How much can we really trust that? And boy, conference realignment seeps into everything these days. I would tell you that we have a conference realignment coaching hire, basically, that's been made here in this cycle. So I want to get into that. Symbolic, certainly, of the time and place that we are in right now in college sports. And if we have some time, I would love to talk Big 12 bowl games as well, because I think it's a big opportunity for BYU in particular this bowl season for the Big 12. So that's what I've got for you here tonight. Appreciate everybody who is here as you file in. You guys know the deal. Fill up the chat. If you want to guarantee that your question or comment makes it on the show tonight, you can click the $ below the chat box. In order to do so, we'll create a super chat, pin your chat in a separate column for me, which ensures that you make it on the show tonight. I appreciate everybody who does that. Could not do this without all of your support. I appreciate it immensely. If you could like the video, that really helps me as well. Appreciate all of you guys who do that. And you can reach me on Venmo as well at John-Kurtz-4. If you are not catching the show live, that is an easy way to get in touch, is to submit your question or comment with a donation at John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. So I appreciate everybody once again who does that. Okay. Oh, subscribe as well to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, of course. OFBnews.com to do that, or click the link in the description of this video. But you will get Big 12 news straight to your inbox multiple times a week for free. I will cut through all the noise, and you do not have to do a single thing. You're not going to get news that matters to the SEC or Big Ten. It's how it relates and matters to the Big 12. Everything that you need to know in the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, OFBnews.com. So appreciate everybody who does that. Let me start here on Venmo. We had a contribution from Polly, much appreciated. Polly, big fan of both the shows and what is going on with the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. So I appreciate that. Polly says, I'm happy for your success. You make college football better. I love your shows. Thank you, Polly. I appreciate it immensely, all your support. If you want to be awesome like Polly, again, it is John-Kurtz-4 in order to do that on Venmo if you want to weigh in with your question or comment there. So much appreciated. Great start to the show. Always love the compliments. So you guys can keep them coming. I'm already seeing in the chat, though, that we've got a little dissent among the ranks in terms of what I'm about to talk about with this this Heisman Trophy, though, unfortunately. Look, Travis Hunter wins the Heisman. It was the closest race that we have had since 2009. And no matter which way you slice it, this is a wonderful thing for the Big 12. I will say, as I said just a moment ago, we're having the wrong argument about this. It is insane to me the way all of the arguing is going on this. So I'll tell you why in just a moment. But it's not even just about Travis Hunter for the Big 12. The Big 12 had number 1, number 5, number 8 in the Heisman voting, which is pretty damn impressive for a league that at one point a couple of weeks ago, everybody was writing off as potentially not even making it into the playoff because you're going to throw Army in there or you were going to throw Tulane in there instead of a Big 12 champion, right? It's changed quite a bit. Number 5 was Cam Skattebo, who I will tell you was robbed of an invite to New York. The guy should have gotten a free trip to New York. I feel for him on that front because, one, I mean, I just like the idea of inviting a solid top 5 anyway. I imagine that the Heisman is not like totally cash strapped, right? That wouldn't be like a massive deal for them to add one more kid to the list to get a free trip to New York. I mean, hell, the schools would probably pay for that too, right? Just for the extra attention. I mean, just add that to the marketing budget. Hey, we've got a kid that can go to New York here. Should have gotten an invite. If you look at the voting, the drop-off, it went from 229 right in front of him to 170 for Skattebo in terms of points, and then 67 after that. So there's a drop-off of over 100 there when the drop-off was like, 60 to him? Feels like that would have made sense, everybody involved with the Heisman, to just let Cam Skattebo get an invite. But I digress. It is what it is. Travis Hunter is the 8th Big 12 player to win the Heisman, the first since Kyler Murray in 2018. I think RG3 would have been the last from a current Big 12 member, correct? So really good stuff. Not an Oklahoma quarterback. This was a Colorado two-way player. And as I said, well, the Big 12 has 3 players here. The SEC does not have a single player in the top 10, which is interesting. And I know, look, do we need to like tear down the SEC for it? No, we don't. But there might be something to like, hey, you didn't have a single like dominant team in the SEC. And some of that is reflected by not having a guy in the Heisman race. Because if you had a dominant team, there would have definitely been, like, had Georgia gone through unbeaten, or perhaps even just as a one-loss team. Well, I guess I was about to say that. I was about to say this. I'm going to go look up his numbers real quick. Like Carson Beck. My impression has been that Carson Beck has not been all that impressive this year, right? I don't know. Still 3,400 yards, 28 touchdowns, 12 picks. Like, had Georgia been a more dominant force this year, you probably still would have gotten Carson Beck just with a cursory invite anyway, right? Because that's how it works. Had the SEC had one of those dominant teams, you would just take the best player from what everybody perceives to be the best team and throw them into the mix, and they would have been there for the Heisman. So it is sort of indicative of what kind of a year it's been for the SEC as a whole, that they do not have not just a Heisman finalist, but even somebody in the top 10. Like, you certainly would have had Carson Beck or somebody in the top 10 if Georgia were there, for instance. Or if, like, Quinn Ewers had the big year that people were really projecting him to have. So it does say a little something about the SEC, but I'm not here to make like a serious argument like, oh man, we got to slam the SEC and drill them because they didn't have anybody in the top 10 of the Heisman voting. No, they're still, SEC fans, get mad at me. Like, I would still say the SEC is the best league in college football. I would say that. It's not by a wide margin, but it is. And there were not dominant teams, so you didn't get your cursory. Like, for instance, the last time that it was this close, I mentioned 2009, closest margin of victory since then. And at that point, Mark Ingram won the Heisman over, it was kind of funny looking at that list, like Toby Gerhart, but that was also the Ndamukong Suh year, where like I feel like Ndamukong Suh probably should have won the Heisman that year. But instead, let's just give it to an Alabama running back because Alabama is so good. we feel like we need to just reward them with something. So let's give this to the running back. Anyway, it's big for the Big 12 because you have to try and win in the margins these days. And the Heisman qualifies as that. It is not like a major college football event anymore these days, it feels like. I mean, certainly it still matters. Certainly it still is something people care about. Clearly, as I'll get to in just a moment, the impassioned arguments that have happened because of this. People do care about it, but not in the same way that we do the playoff or just arguing about regular season games or any of that stuff, okay? It is different than that. But if you're the Big 12, you take the wins when you can get them, and you absolutely pimp out this win as much as you can. You market the hell out of it. You push Coach Prime and Travis Hunter and Shaduer Sanders in as much as you can. You've got to shove this down everybody's throat now that you have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Take it and run with it. It is much like if you're trying to play the game the exact same way as the Big Ten and the SEC, you're going to lose every single time, right? I'm trying to think of like a good example of like a monopoly out there in the country. If you try to just play the business game the same way, if you're going to come out with burgers, you're going to be a fast food burger joint, you try and do the exact same thing as McDonald's, you're going to lose. But like, what's your niche? If you're In and Out, got a niche. Whataburger, you've got a niche. You can customize it with all these different things. You got to have a niche. You got to do it a little bit differently if you want to have a legitimate chance to carve something out. You become something, and that's what the Big 12 is having to try and do here. So I think this is a very good thing that we're seeing this for the Big 12, and it's the latest example of this. We've gone to this for a long time now, where at one point it was, hey, the Big 12 needs to embrace the gambling outfits, playing on all nights of the week, which is kind of happening, and the after dark slots as everybody endured this year. There was a lot that the Big 12 has actually done differently and is making an effort to do that. This is another one of those things. Win the Heisman, push it all in, make it a big deal. Make it as big of a deal as you possibly can. And I'm sure Brett Yormark and company are on that, and they are going to do it. And also hype up the fact that, again, you had 2 of the top 5, 3 of the top 8. And I mentioned, hey, Cam Skattebo should have been a Heisman finalist. But what about Shaduer Sanders? This is where, again, I'm on my Joel Klatt apology tour because I sort of took him to task in the offseason when he suggested Colorado could be like a 9 or 10 win team and challenge for the Big 12 championship game. I mean, he freaking nailed it, like to a T. That's exactly what they did. They won 9 games and challenged for the championship game, which means they were on the fringe of the playoff. But, dude, Shaduer, if we're talking about the Heisman being an MVP award, which I don't think that it necessarily should be, and that would be the Ashton Jeanty argument, would be like he's the MVP of college football. Shaduer Sanders is right there in that conversation, if that's what we're talking about. And I know the Jeanty hive, the anti-Travis hive, will jump all over this. And, well, John, if he's not even the MVP on his own team and it's actually Shaduer Sanders, okay, I'll get to more on that in just a moment. But Shaduer Sanders had literally 82% of Colorado's offense this year. Literally 82% of Colorado's offense. He was the offense, and he made it work despite not much of a running game, despite an offensive line that was a little bit better than last year, but still was not great. Gave up a lot of pressure. He was running for his life quite a bit. Like, Shaduer definitely has a pretty strong argument for MVP of college football. Ashton Jeanty is certainly up there. I mean, Cam Skattebo is certainly up there. Cam Ward has to be up there with the way he transformed Miami this year and gave them a legit shot at the playoff. But Shaduer is very much right in that combo, people, if that's what we're doing. Now, as far as what's happening with the Heisman argument, here's where I feel like everybody has just kind of lost the plot. Like, you'll hear 2 things a lot when people are talking about the Heisman. Like, one, the anti-Travis Hunter people / just the Ashton Jeanty truthers will tell you, and I already saw it in the chat. You know what? Who said that in the chat earlier? Who said that? Todd, not even the best wide receiver. I guess that's not quite as bad, Todd. If you want to say he's not even the best wide receiver, we can have that debate and conversation. I know the San Jose State kid was really good. I know Teteroa McMillan was incredible. But we can have that debate. The point is not that Travis Hunter was overwhelmingly the best receiver in the country. It's that he was one of the 2 or 3 best receivers in the country, and also one of the, I don't know, maybe more like top 10 corners in the country, and played an obscene amount of snaps on both sides of the football and did it in a spectacular way. I'll give you more. My comparison, I've got a good comp here on what I think like athletically Travis Hunter was kind of like. And I think that will help accentuate this some more. But you'll see a lot the argument like, well, Travis Hunter was just a mid wide receiver and a mid defensive back. Like, neither of those is true. We don't need to be attacking these guys like they are some farcical Heisman winner or potential Heisman winner, because neither Ashton Jeanty or Travis Hunter, neither of those guys are farcical when it comes to this. Travis Hunter was 5th in catches, 5th in the country, not in the Big 12, 5th in catches in the country, 6th in receiving yards in the country. He was 2nd in touchdown catches in the country. And if you go look at that highlight reel, it is as impressive at the very least as any other receiver in the country, which style points do matter here because we're talking about the best player. You just lob it up anywhere near there, he's got the Spider-Man hands. Think back to even like that North Dakota State touchdown catch he had at the beginning of the year. Like, it's nuts what this guy can do. And then as a defensive back, he was top 5 in the country in interceptions and passes defended. I know I've heard people point to like a Pro Football Focus college grade. I don't have any problem with Pro Football Focus. It can be a somewhat useful tool, but if you're basing everything, your opinion on the guy on like a PFF college grade where they seem to devote less attention, come on, man. The guy's a total freak show. Like, to me, it's also about, it's not just what he did statistically, which definitely stands up. When was the last time, like Charles Woodson in 1997, he was used some on offense. He wasn't top 5 in catches and 6th in receiving yards and 2nd in touchdown catches. Okay. He was not that. That is the difference here. You're seeing Travis Hunter being an exceptional player at both positions while doing it with this obscene level of athleticism that is like Bo Jackson sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that they're like the same type of athlete necessarily, but just in terms of the sheer incredible athleticism that you're seeing from the guys out there on the field and the plays that they make, that's what it is. It's like of that ilk that you're seeing, sort of like a Bo Jackson style athlete out there. So to me, and I think to any reasonable person, like, yes, of course, that's Heisman worthy. Very much so. That is Heisman worthy. Now, on the other side, a lot of times you will see like, well, Ashton Jeanty was only good because he played a Mountain West schedule, and this really isn't all that impressive. Okay, Ashton Jeanty put up 192 yards and 3 touchdowns on Oregon. Like, he's legit. And this was a historic season. I mean, it's one of the 5, at worst, like 5 best running back seasons of all time. So we don't need to tear down Ashton Jeanty either. I have certainly given Boise State plenty of criticism about their Mountain West schedule when it comes to like the college football playoff and being a little bit overrated in the committee's rankings there. That is one thing, but it's another to say that, well, Ashton Jeanty is not a worthy Heisman winner because he played mostly a Mountain West schedule. Okay, when you put up a top 5 running back season of all time against a group of 5 schedule, you can be a Heisman winner. That's pretty damn good. And then especially when it's almost bookended. I guess it wasn't the first game of the year, but when you have the justification of like, hey, look what I did to Oregon, almost 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, that certainly is going to do a lot of validating. So we can say that a lot of years, Ashton Jeanty would win the Heisman. He had a good enough season to do it. He's a good enough player to do it. Same with Travis Hunter, both of those guys. And of course, you got a really tight vote because they're both in that caliber. It's really very similar to, and this is something I definitely have been guilty of, but it's very similar to how we all got baited into like Big 12 fans and Boise. I'm sorry, I keep doing Boise to my friends out there. Boise / just like group of 5 fans attacking each other over the resume of Boise for the playoff. That's not really what should be happening. That's kind of what the powers that be want. Big Ten, SEC. Hey, if we can just let all of them fight over the crumbs and destroy each other and not actually come at us, that's the best thing for us. We don't need them to realize the real fight is with all of us. If we can just keep them fighting amongst each other. And there is definitely an element of that here. Like, these guys are both excellent. We don't need to do this. We have a Heisman where not only is a quarterback not in the top 2, but you don't have Big Ten or SEC involved here in the top 2 either. We're talking about Big 12 G5. Big 12 G5. This is a year where in the playoff, you got two of the 4 automatic buys to the Big 12 and G5, and 2 of the Heisman finalists, the top 2, in fact, in the award, Big 12 G5. Why do we do this? I've seen a lot of people asking that, like, why are so many people like at each other's throats about Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty? I think some of it obviously is just the general culture that we have these days surrounding sports. Everybody wants to argue like total lunatics all the time. Again, not saying that I'm not a part of that. I definitely get drawn into it some. Twitter has made it worse, leaning more and more into that, and everybody just being crazy, going after each other. But I think there's a lot of anti-Coach Prime angst still out there, and people see Travis Hunter as an extension of him, even though, I think as arrogant as people believe Coach Prime to be, at least as a player, I don't think he is nearly as much as a coach now. And I'm not sure all that is fair, but I think that's the perception. Like, Travis Hunter is not that. I mean, the guy's talking about his mom not knowing about hip hop until his fiance tells him about Lil Wayne. He likes to fish, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, great student. Like, there's so much just projection from what people don't like about Coach Prime, or what their perceptions are of things that they don't like about Coach Prime, that I think that does drive a lot of the anti-Travis Hunter stuff. But there's also just some real like pro G5 angst. Like, people in this day and age want to see the G5 lifted up. So, there's that. There's that too. Anyway, it is what it is. You're just going to deal with some of it. And that's the fact of the matter. I wish that it weren't happening. I think both guys are great. I'm happy, obviously, for the Big 12's sake that Travis Hunter won. I would have voted Travis Hunter because, again, basically, he had the requisite stats on both sides to back that up in terms of being something that is truly unique in college football. But what puts it over the top for me is just he does it, again, with that, like, Bo Jackson flair. Like, he's that level of insane athlete with a crazy, insane highlight reel. So that, to me, would make the difference there. I do not have a Heisman vote, so you can't blame me. I had no actual, real, legitimate impact on it. Now, some of the fallout from this I do want to talk about in just a moment as it relates to the aforementioned Coach Prime, but let's first check in with Eddie. What's going on, Eddie? If you guys want to be a part of the show tonight, make sure your chat gets on there. Click the $ below the chat box in order to do so. Submits a super chat, which makes sure that it gets on the show tonight. So I appreciate you, Eddie. Eddie says, hi, buddy. I'm disappointed with some of the team fan bases. If we want to make more money and put the bad storylines to bed, fans need to go to games and teams need to win the games, bowls against the SEC and Big Ten. Only way to earn respect. So I guess the disappointment there would be people not being excited enough about the bowl season. You do have a couple of opportunities against the SEC and Big Ten this bowl season. I mean, obviously the big one is going to be Arizona State against possibly Texas. I mean, we'll see. Go Dabo, get it done. Baylor, LSU in the Texas Bowl. It's going to be a really disappointed LSU team. Just not the kind of season they wanted this year. In fact, it's the type of game where I feel like Baylor should be considered the favorite. They will care about that game a lot more. Iowa State, Miami, I guess that ACC, even though it is Miami. Tech, Arkansas, we've already seen Arkansas lose to the worst team in the Big 12 this year. So we'll see how much that would actually get you. K-State, Rutgers, I mean, it is technically the Big 10, but I don't think that's going to earn you a ton of respect. So you've got a couple opportunities there, but man, the bowl season, it doesn't hurt to win those bowl games against the SEC and Big 10, but it is tough to make a case that it does nearly as much as you'd really like that too, in terms of the narrative. But Arizona State, Arizona State can just 20-fold generate more respect than anybody can the rest of bowl season by winning a game against Texas, if they do. Now that's a big, big if, but I'm with you in terms of like, Eddie, every little bit helps. So let's get behind it. But especially with the transfer portal now these days, it's just so hard for people to get fired up about bowls. And it's not even just because you don't have as many guys playing. It's also because everybody just turns their attention toward portal season. Like there's no time for everybody to just like build up and find reason to be excited with the bowl. It's like, hey, we're right on to the next thing. Like Texas Tech fans right now are not talking about Arkansas. They're talking about, well, what was the number one transfer portal class according to 24/7. It's now down to number 2 behind Ole Miss. But either way, just a huge, huge portal class, huge portal haul. That's what people are concerned with, and that's what people are talking about right now. So it's hard to blame them, but I understand, Eddie. I understand the frustration there. Eddie also says, I'm thinking about the next contract in 2031, but also the new playoff. The Big 12 needs to win those games, especially against the SEC and Big 10. Yes, that is where, I will be rooting for Clemson. I would much rather Arizona State get a chance to play Clemson, get a team into the Final Four, take your chances at that point. But it would generate more respect if you do beat Texas. Now, part of the problem is, even if you do pull off a win like that, you still can't get clubbed on your way out the door. TCU learned that lesson the hard way. I mean, I feel like that's like the most disrespected college football playoff win that anybody has had so far in the history of the damn thing is TCU beating Michigan, being the only team to beat Michigan for over a calendar year when they rolled through and won the national championship. After that was a damn good Michigan team, and TCU beat them, went toe-to-toe and beat them. After there's, Nick Saban wants to claim that there's still controversy as to why TCU got in. But the problem is when you get blasted the next game in the national championship game, like that's what people remember. They're not going to give you enough credit for winning the game that you did and actually thinking about that. So anyway, Eddie, you are correct for sure that the biggest thing that can happen is to start winning games in the playoff, particularly against Big 10 or SEC teams, which anytime you're playing a playoff game, very good chance that you're going to be playing one of those two conferences. So it matters a lot there. Let's see. Okay. Again, click the $ below the chat box if you want to be a part of the show tonight. Also, now that we have more of you in here from Twitter, hello, Twitter audience. Thank you for being here. If you want to subscribe to the Big 12 newsletter, Open for Business, do so at ofbnews.com. Big 12 news straight to your inbox multiple times per week. I'm cutting through SEC and Big 10 stuff, college football news, how it relates to the Big 12, everything that matters to this conference. No SEC or Big 10 bias. Tough to find that anywhere on the national scene right now where you typically get your college football news. ofbnews.com to subscribe or click the link in the description of this video. So there's been a lot of doubt about, Coach Prime generally and how long he's going to stay at Colorado, like what the staying power is with this job once what he would deem to be his sons are gone. Now, obviously, Shaduer and Shiloh, but Travis Hunter, he lumps in there as well. Those guys are going to be on to the NFL. So now what's he going to do? What happens here at Colorado? I think actually what just happened on Saturday should tell you that there is a lot more staying power for Coach Prime at Colorado than you would have suspected, which can be a very good thing for the league if you're a Big 12 fan. There's the obvious here, which is one that, Coach Prime now has bona fide legitimacy to sell like, hey, yeah, I did bring in a highly recruited guy and look at what I turned him into. The guy is going to be like a top 5 NFL draft pick and just won the Heisman, got all this love and attention the entire year. because of me, basically, my sheer force that the personality I have drives. We had crazy TV numbers the entire year. More people were watching us than certainly any non-SEC or Big Ten team, but we were treated like one of the very top brands in the sport in terms of eyeballs on us. So I will get you that, which is in turn going to help you get the Heisman. To which the Ashton Jeanty Hive replies, well, yeah, exactly. That's why, John, so many people watched. Yeah, okay, I get it. It proves that even if you're not going 11-1 or 12-0, because it is Colorado, it's a job that 2 years ago was basically like the worst program in FBS, well, not FBS, but Power 4 football. It's been something that's had to have been turned around. And even if you're not going 12-0 or 11-1, you can still win the Heisman because I generate enough attention and I will let you shine. And even beyond that, like, hey, I had 2 guys in the top 8 of the Heisman, one of which probably should have been a lot higher in Shaduer Sanders. Okay, 2 guys finishing that high in the Heisman race. So if you are a 5-star quarterback, I guess Julian Lewis technically is a 4-star quarterback, right? But if you are the next big guy, it's a hell of a talking point, man. Look, the last quarterback that was here generated 82% of our offense. He finished top 10 in the Heisman voting. And the guy that he was throwing to was the winner of that award, by the way. It's a blueprint of a guy that literally could have gone anywhere in the country, right, to play football. Travis Hunter could have gone to Georgia, Ohio State, wherever. Name your spot, he could have been there. But he followed Coach Prime to freaking Jackson State, right? First of all, Jackson State, and then went to the worst Division I, or the worst Power 4 rather program in the country, and still found a way to win a Heisman. That's a great selling point on the blueprint of like why a blue chip recruit should come here. Now, right now, Colorado's high school recruiting class is like 37th in the country, so it's nothing incredibly crazy. But he'll have now real selling points to show to not just guys in the high school ranks, but also in the portal, which we know is where Coach Prime is going to really live. And for all the people like even me who doubted how much you can really, truly build a program that way, it worked. It worked really well this year. They were one slip up at the end of the year away from making the Big 12 championship game. It worked. And so now he's going to go back there again. And if you are a star from wherever, insert school here, you can say, not only am I going to give you a bunch of exposure, you can win whatever award you want to win because I will let you completely spread your wings and flourish. That's another piece of this with Travis Hunter. How many coaches across the country would have been comfortable letting him play all the snaps that he did this year? Not everybody would. Because of, first of all, obviously the injury possibilities there. And Travis Hunter did battle some injuries this year. But just more risk of you getting hurt, more risk of you wearing down. And Travis Hunter clearly was an exceptional athlete who did not really wear down, man. By the end of the year, that Oklahoma State game, he was all over the place. And I know everybody said, well, Oklahoma State sucks. They were throwing him free picks and all this, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, man. He was still running around making crazy plays. He still added an insane touchdown catch to his highlight reel in that game. So he didn't really wear down. Prime believed in him, let him do that. Did not try to just pigeonhole him as a wide receiver or a defensive back, whichever, would have helped the team more where they had a bigger area of need, especially if you're going to a place like a Georgia. That's what they're going to do. Like, hey, we're not desperate for help at both wide receiver and defensive back, or we're going to need you to play every single snap on both sides of the ball. Just pick one, specialize there. You'll be great. You'll be great. And I would even say that to a lot of the people that are pushing back, like the guy earlier who said, well, not even the best receiver in the country. Well, he was in the conversation for it. And had he just specialized as a receiver this year, he damn well could have been just the best receiver in the country if he wasn't having to worry about playing defensive back and all those snaps and all of that. But that's a big part of it. Prime, let him do it. Let him do it. I will be your champion. I will let you do what is best for you and your pro career. Meanwhile, we still have a good, legitimate program that grew and developed throughout the year like a good and legitimate program does. And that's why we wound up 9-3 and coming close to the college football playoff just 2 years after being the worst Power 4 program in the country. Prime's got some real stuff he can sell now. So I know that, like Travis Hunter said, he's not going anywhere. We've seen that sentiment a lot. I can still understand like some skepticism from people out there. Will the right job wind up opening up somehow? Is that going to be in the NFL? Like, I get he is such a commodity. I get wondering, all right, like, is he really going to stick around? I would just make the point here that he's got a lot to build off of. He's got a lot to build off of this year. And I don't think that it's destined to be some kind of crazy drop-off. Quarterback will tell a lot. Shaduer, I think, is the bigger loss in terms of, like I said, we're going like MVP. Shaduer is the bigger loss here, and Julian Lewis, it's going to be much harder for him to just step right in and be ready to go. So maybe they've got to go get a kid out of the portal. We'll see. That will probably tell a lot of what the fate would actually be for this team next year. But I think there's more reason to believe that there's staying power for Coach Prime at Colorado than what we had before, for sure. Old Texas Tech man. Thank you, Old Texas Tech man, for your support. Going to get to Tech here in just a few moments. So stay tuned for that, Old Texas Tech man. And Alan, what's up, Alan? Alan says, John, cheering for Arizona State to beat Texas or Clemson. Don't think Oregon is unbeatable. Great to have the Heisman back in the Big 12. Good Jayhawk win versus NC State. Big 12 dominant conference. Yeah, it hasn't been the greatest non-conference basketball season for the Big 12 so far this year. But now we get to, what's the Brad Brownell in the ACC would say, well, now we enter, the period where the Big 12 has it all rigged against each other because Ken Palm loves them all and they all will just play themselves in conference play and they'll just boost each other, stroke each other's ego, boost that resume themselves, whatever. I'm sure we'll start to hear some of that talk as we get into conference play. But yes, nice win against NC State, Final Four team from last year. Is Oregon unbeatable? No, Oregon is definitely not unbeatable. Now, would they be unbeatable compared to Arizona State? I guess you could say, since we have seen this year their efforts against Idaho and the aforementioned Boise, it's out there. They've put that type of an effort out on the field. I have my doubts that you would get that out of them in the college football playoff with a national championship on the line. But as far as the rest of the field goes, no, Oregon is certainly not unbeatable. And they've obviously, has been much discussed, they've got a tougher path than even like a Penn State who lost that Big Ten championship game to them. So if in a vacuum, is Arizona State an automatic L to Oregon? Maybe not. But I think you are talking 5% chance, something like that. But I'm with you. Let's baby steps. It would be massive if they just get to the Final Four. If they beat Texas or Clemson, justify, at least in some ways, having that bye, that baby steps, that would be a major, major thing for the league. Major thing. So appreciate you, Alan. Thank you for being here as always. I genuinely appreciate you, my friend. Since we had old man Texas Tech fan just a second ago, I will skip the conference realignment coaching hire real quick to get to this. So one Big 12 team is doing what it always does, which is dominate the offseason hype machine. Dominate the offseason hype machine. We see it, feels like every single year now. Are we going to just be duped again, though? Or is this real? Is this real, or are we about to be duped again? Texas Tech having a great portal season after landing two really big coordinator hires. When Zach Kitley left to go be the head coach at Western Kentucky, they wind up replacing him with Mark Leftwich from Texas State, who people felt like was, it was reported was a very hot commodity this offseason. And then Sheil Wood from Houston comes in for Tim DeRuyter at defensive coordinator when Joey McGuire decides, hey, I'm going to be pretty cutthroat here, and I'm going to go ahead and make a change at DC. And it looks like that was a pretty good move if you can go hire the guy away from Houston that put together a hell of a defense this year. That was definitely not Houston's problem. Big step. start to hear it from Tech fans. Now, they lost Micah Hudson, 5-star receiver. That definitely drew a lot of headlines. But in terms of production that you're losing from this year, it's not that much. It's not that much. And I kind of wrote that off at the time, like, that's the type of thing that it'll suck much more for like the Twitter news cycle. And he hasn't committed yet, has he? I saw Texas A&M was supposed to be like the favorite for him. I mean, that would sting. That would blow if he goes to Texas A&M. But I think that's, more in terms of perception and what you're going to have to see on twitter.com every single day, as opposed to what you're actually losing there. Everybody else has been coming in, seems to be pretty good, though, because as of yesterday, Texas Tech had the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. It's now down to number 2. This is according to 24/7 Sports, just behind Ole Miss. But Ole Miss had one of the absolute best transfer classes in the country this past year. They've got money. They're spending it. They are going for it. That's good company to be in. On Friday night, they got 2 commits in the portal. Mississippi State cornerback Bryce Pollock and Miami, Ohio wide receiver Reggie Virgil. That's what boosted them then up to the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. It's very early as well. I mean, I'm sure these will fluctuate. But the point is, now you're hearing that drum beat again. Texas Tech fans, man, look at all this talent we're adding. We are unstoppable. We've got money. We've got resources. We've got 2 great coordinator hires. We money whipped the guy away from Houston. Who's your daddy? Look at us in the portal. Let's go. And I'm not saying there's not things to be excited about. I really like the corner from Mississippi State, 72 tackles, 10 passes defended, 1 forced fumble, 1 INT, a couple seasons in Starkville. Highly sought after. The receiver obviously was as well. You're ahead of Houston, Louisville, Ole Miss, Mississippi State up at the top. But that group does kind of tell you transfer portal rankings right now. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. They got a big offensive lineman too in Hunter Zambrano from Illinois State. Texas Tech has landed some nice prospects. 4-star prospects according to 24/7 in the portal. Again, take that with a grain of salt. Hard to appropriately dole out star ratings for guys in the portal. It is what it is. I would not try to discount anything that Tech has done. I think those coordinator hires are objectively good, and I don't have the capacity to evaluate every single transfer that's coming in this year, but pretty reputable source is saying this is a very, very good haul for Texas Tech. I told you guys this past offseason, like I got burned. I went on Sikkim 365 Sports before the 22 season? No, 23. For the 23 season, and I said, well, I would pick Texas Tech to win the Big 12. And then I got burned. And then this year, things started out very poorly, obviously. Washington State game was not good. I know Taj didn't play. Started out very poorly, came back and made progress this year with some ugliness in between. Baylor game, for instance, but some real progress made. Joey McGuire wins 8 games. I think it's great to be inching forward and making progress. But each of the last couple of off seasons, ever since Joey McGuire got there, Tech fans, they're hungry. I get it. It's a passionate, very hungry fan base that very, very badly wants a win. They want to break through. It's been since 2009 that they won 9 games in a regular season. They want to break through bad. And so it's easy to get on board when you have things like that, like a guy who can accumulate talent, clearly in Joey McGuire. I have never doubted that. I have never doubted the ability of Joey McGuire to accumulate talent. It's always been, how's it going to come through on the field? He is progressively inching forward. I think he's making the right moves. I love being aggressive enough to go out there and get rid of Tim DeRuyter for Sheil Wood. I don't know what, Kim, I'm not sure where you're getting this. No, I'm a big fan. I think that was a great move. That was clearly a highly sought after defensive coordinator that I think Houston was very upset to see leave. So I think that's a great move. I respect Joey for that a lot. I do. I like the guy a ton. Had a great time chatting with him at Big 12 Media Days this year. But Tech fans, you know what's coming. I feel like you guys all know what's coming. I got to see it. I understand it was a step forward this year, but if you're telling me like we're going to get Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game, I would never predict it until I see it. Texas Tech could add Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty in the transfer portal, and I would still say I need to see it before I believe it. Tech fans, I love you. Great fan base. And that's why the hype train really gets going every single offseason. And you rally behind a charismatic leader in Joey McGuire who can accumulate talent. But I've seen this movie before, a couple of times. And so if I'm to expect it to be any different, I've just got to actually have it proven to me. I can't go out there and believe that on my own until I see it happen. So I am happy for Texas Tech that they're having a nice offseason. I think on paper, there will probably be reasons to say, hey, we should put them in that contender category going into next year in the Big 12. Probably. I mean, pending whatever. I guess don't hold me to it. Don't hold me to that prediction specifically at this point. I'm sorry. I'm reading Kim's here to say you got to see it. I get it. And that's not unfair. Okay. Got it. Kim, we're on the same page. All right, good. Yeah, look, Tech could line up the 85 Bears defense to give to Shield Wood. And I would say, well, I got to see it, man. I need to see it. I need to see it actually happen before I buy it. Not only because I got personally burned, but I'm just playing the odds based on every year since 2009. Joey's definitely showing signs of getting there. I do think it was progress this year. A little bit alarming to me that in the losses, it was giving up 50 points to Abilene Christian, giving up 50 plus to Baylor. The Washington State game being kind of a debacle. A lot of ups and downs and big swings. Now, that's why you bring in Shield Wood, right? To shore up the defense. He'll certainly have resources to do that and probably better talent than what he was working with at Houston. But I'm still in wait and see mode. I will put it that way. All right, let's get to a couple other super chats here. Thank you, Daniel, Cat Fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. I appreciate you as always, my friend. Thank you very, very much for being here. James, what's up, James? James says on the 24/7 rankings, I see Tech is 36. James, are you looking at transfer portal rankings or are you looking at like recruiting class rankings? My guess would be on that you're looking at recruiting class rankings. Where did I have 24/7 sports transfer portal rankings? I had this up earlier. So 2025. Okay, I see what happens. When you go to it, it pulls up with 2024. You got to go to 2025. You need to change the drop down to 2025. And I can show you what that looks like. Bam. Yeah, we're seeing it there. So 2025 football team rankings. Ole Miss, number 1, Texas Tech, number 2. They both have 6 commits. Tech's got 3 4-stars. Ole Miss has 4. So I see how you made that mistake. I had clicked the link directly to 2025 before, but when you just go and Google search like transfer portal rankings, 24/7 sports, it will default to 2024. But what you're looking for is 2025. So appreciate that, James. And okay, Kim, we already got to that. So I appreciate you there. Thank you again to Daniel for your support. Okay. Now, this one, I always say here, this is a non-Power 2 channel, originates from Big 12 country, but we're generally going to give everything from a non-Power 2 perspective. This is going to be more around the ACC, but man, conference realignment news affects everybody. Big 12, SEC, ACC, whatever conference you're in these days. Conference realignment news is going to affect everybody. And we actually got some, I think, big realignment news hidden, tucked away in one of the hires of this college football coaching cycle. It's crazy, but I had not even considered this. And the more I started to read about this and think about it, I was like, damn, maybe I was wrong about this hire, because I definitely panned the hire and was sort of like, hey, bring it on. I'm here for the content, but I don't think this is going to be great. I may be retracting that a little bit here. So Bill Belichick gets hired at North Carolina, right? My initial gut reaction was like, one, you just ran off a guy for being too old, right? Bill Belichick is like 6 months younger than Mac Brown. Why you got to do Mac Brown like that? A guy who I really like, by the way. And like Bill Belichick dealing with college athletes, I don't know. That just he doesn't seem to fit the game. But you start thinking about it, it's like, well, I don't, these guys are now basically pros with the money they're getting paid. You're not going to have to do the same traditional type of recruiting you used to. Like, okay. So I'm coming around to it a little bit more. I still, I don't know. It's like things passed Belichick by a little bit. I was listening to Seth Wickersham the other day talk about how Belichick, on a podcast all season was pointing out mistakes NFL coaches were making and that he hasn't lost. Okay. A little hard for me to believe, but I can get behind it. But the biggest thing is just the commitment that North Carolina is making to football right now and why that they're showing with hiring Bill Belichick. I should add the other thing about North Carolina that had me kind of panning this was, well, too many cooks in the kitchen. That's very obvious. They're infamous for that and having donors have way too much pull there. I mean, they're very similar to Texas, a lot like, guess why Mac Brown was coaching at both places. He's the perfect type of guy to deal with stuff like that. But I thought this article from WRAL was really, really interesting. So here's a quote that they attribute to Jennifer Lloyd, who's a member of the UNC Board of Trustees. We are absolutely 100% committed to football and committed to winning in football. We want to win a national championship in football. North Carolina hasn't won a conference championship in football in like 4 decades. Here's a quote from Bubba Cunningham, the athletic director. Quote, "It's a risk. We're taking a risk that we're investing more in football with the hope and ambition that the return is going to significantly outweigh the investment." Yeah, I mean, look, it's a risk when you pay any coach the amount of money that they're paying Belichick. They're basically on the hook for like a guaranteed $30 million there. It's a 5-year deal worth $50 million, but only the first 3 are guaranteed. They are committing $16 million for assistant coaches, just an entire support staff, included in that a general manager. And then they're committing $13 million in revenue sharing to the football program. $13 million in revenue sharing for the football program, which I would imagine is going to be like fairly standard. And honestly, North Carolina might be a place where they get stuck pumping a little bit more of the rev share into men's basketball than you would at other places. But all of that is certainly signaling a major commitment from North Carolina to football, which has not traditionally been there for the Tar Heels. And then this is the really interesting part of this article that I'm reading. Unspoken in that is the Tar Heels conference affiliation. UNC is a charter member of the ACC. The North Carolina headquartered league was long at or near the top of the athletic hierarchy in college athletics. But football's ascendancy and basketball's decline in overall importance, an ill-timed long-term TV deal combined with consolidation of major brands into other leagues, have left the conference far behind its peers in revenue generation and distribution. They're starting to position this, right? You can feel where this is going. Unspoken in that commitment, the financial commitment the Tar Heels are making is their conference affiliation. Quote, "If we don't get into that game, we're going to get left behind. It was now or never," said UNC trustee Dave Bullock, former chairman of the board. That's what this amounts to. Now or never. To have someone like Coach Belichick come in and try to change the trajectory and do something different. Bullock, this is according to the author, Bullock wants UNC in another league, preferably the SEC. One hope, Belichick in an in-demand football program can close the financial gap in the short term while positioning the Tar Heels to a conference jump in the medium term. So, there was all this ACC kind of kumbaya there for a little while when, admittedly, it did look like for the ACC, things had turned around at least a bit. They had much more of a fighting chance to try and keep all of this together. But you're seeing things signaled here from North Carolina. North Carolina's not sitting there like, well, we'll go hire, John Sumrall, who, I think could have done a really good job. And like, hey, we'll kind of still be a second-ish tier college football program in terms of attention. Maybe we can go out and win 9 or 10 games with this guy. He'll be a good, solid ball coach. And you guys know I love using this line. Most places, I am all about get the ball coach, not the crazy, shiny name. Don't do the Les Miles, Charlie Weiss, Kansas hire thing. Get a ball coach. But here I can actually understand this. Like, take your swing for the fences because you need to generate more attention and just signal that you're serious about this because you've got to signal to the SEC, Big Ten, whoever, like, hey, we can hang, we can do this. We need to be doing everything we can to just position ourselves to be ready when the opportunity comes to actually jump to a major conference. I shouldn't phrase it like that. A Power 2 conference. Jump to one of the big two. And that's what North Carolina is showing here. Like they're serious about this. And it shows you that whether it was all David Bullock or whoever that are the donors behind the scenes on this, it shows you that faction seems to be winning out here. Remember, we talked to Andrew Carter on the channel back in the offseason, who does a great job covering all things North Carolina and in the triad and all that. And he kind of said, like, yeah, there's a faction that wants the Big Ten. There's a faction that wants the SEC. There's a faction that wants them to stay in the ACC. A lot of cooks in the kitchen, remember. A lot of cooks in the kitchen. It appears that those who really are pushing for, hey, the long-term play here is not to be traditionalists and stick around in the ACC. I know all that tradition and stuff is nice, but man, we got to be ready for the future. And that's what they're doing. And a lot of that is, and the article makes this point, it is tied to the basketball identity as well, because like you don't want to get left behind and leave your other sports in the lurch. You gotta do whatever you can to get as much money generating to your athletic programs to be able to fund them the best that you can and give them the most attention on a national level that you properly can. And football has to be the driver on that. There's really nothing else to it. And it seems like North Carolina has that. And so that is a big part of why I'm kind of amending my take on Belichick, because it's like, if it's a more broad-based hire than where I was saying, typical cliche school that thinks it's more important than it is, tries to go out and just hire the big, thunderous, important name, as opposed to just hiring the solid coach. And this is another old guy. And like, what are they doing? Well, what they're doing is showing that they'll swing for the fences and do everything they can to try and make football as good as it can possibly be, because they understand the gravity of the moment here, that you need to be ready to compete in one of the big two conferences whenever that day comes calling. So that is where this is at. I thought the article did a great job of outlining all that. And I've got to say, it's pretty fascinating how realignment is just driving like literally every single decision that everybody is making in college athletics these days, for better or worse. I think we can all agree, generally probably worse. But here we are. So I appreciate that article. Now, I don't understand, Sam, I'm not sure what you're getting at here. I don't know where NC State comes in. I see don't shoot the messenger. I would agree with that, Lorenzo. I literally, like, the take about this being about realignment is from journalists who cover North Carolina. So I'm not sure what the problem is. Okay, so Sam, you started here with what's actually going on with North Carolina. It appears that that's not really your issue. You're upset about just something in general. That's okay. Sam, if you had a legitimate grievance about the North Carolina take, which seems like a weird one to disagree with there, I would welcome the debate. But if you're just going to hate, that's fine. You can continue to hate in the comments. That's okay. More time spent watching for me. I'll take it for the channel for sure. Let's see some bowl thoughts. All right, you guys. Someone asked for some bowl thoughts the other day. I would like to talk a little bit about the Big 12 bowl season here. Okay. I think now I was reading a list the other day from our friends at Heartland College Sports that I thought was pretty well done, ranking the Big 12 bowls in order from like most interesting to least. And obviously, you start with Arizona State against whoever they're going to play, Clemson or Texas. But I got to say, they had BYU-Colorado a little bit too low for me in the Alamo Bowl. I think that is a huge, huge part of this. I love that. To me, it's number one in terms of outside of college football playoff, Big 12 bowl games that we're going to get to see, because I know that, one, this is a game that we very easily could have seen as a Big 12 championship game. So we get like a redo of that. Two, I know both teams are going to take this pretty seriously. Like Coach Prime has already said, hey, like our guys are going to play. Like it sounds like you're going to get Shaduer, Travis Hunter. Like Colorado seems to be taking this seriously. Prime, I think this is one of those things that goes underreported about him and people should respect more about him. But he was like, look, we made a commitment, dude. Like we made a commitment. So we're going to finish this off and we're going to play it. That's pretty rare these days. Bowl games, very rare to find that. And BYU, I just imagine, my assumption is BYU will take it very seriously and you won't have a ton of opt-outs or whatever, because that seems like the type of program that BYU has, right? And it's been a special season for the Cougars, a very special season. They're going to want to go out the right way. And they're definitely going to want to finish it off in a game where they get to play one of the big brands, right? Yes, it's in their conference, but Colorado, big brand, a lot of people watching, a lot of attention. You're going to play the Heisman Trophy winner. So that's a lot there. Like, how often do you get that in a bowl where you feel like both sides are going to take the game pretty damn seriously? I'm here for that. I'm also here for what would have happened if that was our Big 12 championship game. What would that have actually looked like? People were so onto the Colorado college football playoff storyline. Would they have actually made the college football playoff had they not slipped up against Kansas? Well, we can find out. If it would have been a BYU Big 12 championship game, you get that. I understand, the point that was being made, and there is definitely something to this. Like, hey, the whole deal, bowl games, you want to get outside and play somebody from outside your conference, to the point of like earlier, what we were talking about in the chat with Eddie, more opportunities, more bites at the apple against the SEC and Big Ten, obviously never hurts. So I can get behind all that. I can definitely get behind all that. But this is an exception to me. This is a cool one. It's a good one. I'm glad that it worked out that way. I think that will be an awesome showcase for the conference to be able to display the Heisman Trophy winner against a team that had an incredible season and two teams that are going to be actually taking bowl season seriously. So I think that's a great one for Big 12 fans. A great one. That is where I'm at on that. I think that is number one for the Big 12. Number two, I do agree with them that I think next you're going in the pecking order, Baylor against LSU. And I know we had an SEC fan earlier assuring me LSU doesn't care about this bowl game. Listen, I know that LSU does not care about a Texas Bowl. I am a K-State fan. I once watched LSU 3 years ago trot out literally like 39 scholarship players for the Texas Bowl, where they're starting. Was it like a receiver at quarterback? I think it was a receiver at quarterback. I've seen LSU no-show a Texas Bowl. Now, that was also an LSU team going through a coaching change, and like Brian Kelly was coming in, an interim coach and all that. I know they don't give two rips about this Texas Bowl. Baylor probably does, right? Baylor, speaking of teams that had great seasons, finished hot, that's Baylor. They get a chance to play a big-name brand in LSU. They will probably be very fired up for this and go out and play well. I would expect Sawyer Robertson. This could be a great game as a springboard to next year, to showcase him to a more national audience, more people to see what he can do. When Baylor flew, unless you were a Big 12 fan, you probably weren't watching much Baylor this year because they fell off the radar very early in the season, and nobody's paying attention to them until at the end you look up like, what? They're 8-4. How did that happen? Last anybody saw of them was the Hail Mary in Boulder. Now they get a chance to show that off against LSU, and it's a chance to pick up a cheap win over the SEC if you're the Big 12. So I think that's a very good one. I do like Iowa State, Miami next. Pop-Tarts Bowl generally seems to be a pretty good matchup. Pop-Tarts Bowl, really, really fun game for the Big 12 here. By the way, did see they have an actual toaster trophy this year. That came out literally hot off the presses right before I hit go live tonight. So for anybody who was unaware, that is going to happen. Typically, you get a good game. 3 of the last 4 games decided by 1 score or less. I guess a lot of this is going to be does Cam? I'm reading this preview blurb. It sounds like Cam Ward would play then. If Cam Ward is actually going to play, then yeah, that does turn into an intriguing matchup. And this is kind of one of those. I know bowl game. It's unfair to totally do this, but it's kind of one of those. We were arguing about BYU or maybe Iowa State, but particularly BYU's resume, holding it up against Miami's and saying BYU should be getting just as much consideration here. Well, this will give us a little bit of a head-to-head comp. Iowa State, who was ahead of BYU, they'll get a chance to go at Miami. Was Miami actually a team that was very much comparable to these Big 12 teams there? That can tell us a little something. Texas Tech, Arkansas, Liberty Bowl, Big 12 SEC. There's that. My apologies to everybody that has to go to that game. I know I feel bad. Liberty Bowl has nice people. I don't enjoy like crapping on the game, but I probably go to that a little bit too much. It's just not the greatest stadium. Memphis is always really cold. It's not a tropical environment. Anyway, Texas Tech should blast Arkansas. They lost to Oklahoma State earlier this year. That's not a game people will be fired up about, I wouldn't think, for Arkansas. Also, I feel like Arkansas is in the Liberty Bowl quite frequently. I wouldn't imagine that they'll be too fired up about that game. But they can bring a lot of fans. I do remember that from 2015 when they played K-State in the Liberty Bowl. They brought a bunch of fans. Old Southwest Conference matchup, for the old heads out there. There is that. I'm sure some will respect that aspect of it. Then we're down to, the rest of them. Man, I don't know. I mean, even as a K-State guy, like K-State Rutgers, I'm like, okay. K-State Rutgers. We've got revenge on K-State's mind from the 2006 Texas Bowl. Ugh. That's about the best I can give you. Yeah, I don't know. This is where, back to the conversation from earlier, like I'm much more concerned with what's going on in the transfer portal for K-State. Are they going to land this receiver that they're bringing in next week? West Virginia, Memphis. Okay. Yeah. But West Virginia is like program in transition, weird spot there. If this were a game in the regular season between West Virginia and Memphis, I think that could have been a really entertaining game. Thank you to Memphis for what they did with Tulane to knock them off course this year. Appreciate them for that. And TCU, Louisiana. I mean, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about that. TCU kind of gets shafted with the New Mexico Bowl. I mean, they definitely can lose that game. I'm sure Louisiana will enjoy getting a chance to have a rip at a Power 4 team there. But there's some thoughts on Big 12 bowls for the first time. We'll obviously talk about them more as they get closer there. But yeah, I think that's about going to wrap it up. Sam, okay, I see Sam is very convinced that NC State is attached at the hip with North Carolina. I mean, Sam, we talked a lot here on this channel about the stories and what that situation would be. In fact, you should go reference that Andrew Carter interview that I mentioned earlier. Somebody who is intimately involved there in covering both of those. And I do believe his answer at the time was like, yeah, there's some talk about that, but push comes to shove. Doubt that that's going to be the holdup there, which is generally how these always go. You can say I don't do my research. I'm aware of what's going on there. I would just say that you are naive if you think that NC State is actually going to have to be tied to North Carolina in the end, in the final hour, if it really came to that. So we'll see. It's not a matter of doing research. It's a matter of, I think we know what talks and what happens at the end of the day here. I am very aware that NC State has a lot of influence on the board there. NC State has grads in high places that certainly help out. And they had the whole deal where North Carolina's got to be transparent about if they're, thinking about it or having conversations. Like, you got to put that out in the open. NC State people have done their best job to position themselves as well as they can for the future there. I'm just very skeptical that's how it will hold up. And apparently those who cover North Carolina are as well, because, again, I just wrote you or read directly from an article that made the insinuation that this commitment that is being made there is about the next step. And not only that, it's quoting a board of trustees member. So it's not just the opinion of somebody writing a column. It was literally in a quote. That was a quote from a guy on the board. So I guess you need to talk to your homies at North Carolina if that's the deal. Don't shoot the messenger. Again, if somebody said that earlier. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger, my friend. All right, we're over an hour. I think that's going to do it for me tonight. I appreciate all of you guys for being here. Big Twitter audience in now. Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. You can subscribe at ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com. Or click the link in the description of this video to get Open for Business. Appreciate all of you who do subscribe. We've got 3,200 plus, barreling towards 3,300 Big 12 fan subscribers there. So if you want Big 12 news, no SEC or Big 10 bias to your inbox multiple times per week, you know where to find it. ofbnews.com. Appreciate everybody. Like the video on your way out the door. That would be much appreciated as well. And I think that's all the housekeeping I've got. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you have a question or comment, you didn't catch it live and you want to squeeze it in, you can do so there. Appreciate that. Ron, wishing everybody happy Christmas. Merry Christmas. Yeah, thank you, Ron. I would echo those sentiments. Hope you guys are all in the Christmas spirit and have a nice week. And I will talk to you very soon.